All right, so I'm going to call to order the Finance Committee meeting for the Portland Board of Public Education, March 24th at 7:17 p.m. The minutes can show that members of the Finance Committee, Chair Figdor, Member Youssef, and myself are here, and we're also joined by Member Russell Better and Student Representative Jody Dayu. Our agenda tonight is, our primary purpose is to get to passing a budget out of the Finance Committee and referring it back to the full board. And that's where we're trying to go tonight. On the way there, we'll start off with any takeaways from our joint Finance Committee meeting that just concluded at about 6:40 p.m. this evening. The superintendent and staff will bring back some information that this committee requested previously this week so that we can review that, ask further questions. And then the way that the agenda is set up, it's to make motions to amend the budget, which I believe we can do without putting forth the budget as is first and then issuing amendments. So the way that will work when we get there is if somebody would like to make an amendment, they will say, I'd like to make a motion to amend the superintendent's budget in this way. Details are in this way. They will need a second. Then the person that made the motion can speak to the motion. There'll be board questions. There'd be the opportunity for public comment and then board discussion. And then we will take a vote, and we'll do that for each and any motion to amend that comes forth from the committee members tonight. And to clarify, only Finance Committee members may make those motions this evening. Other board members that are here, thank you for being here. You're welcome to participate in discussion and questions, but you are not allowed to make motions to amend or to vote on those motions. And then lastly, once we get through that, we will look for a motion to consider and act to approve whatever the budget looks like at that point and recommend that budget to the full board. So just any questions on agenda and kind of the parliamentary side of this evening's meeting from anybody on the committee? No. Okay. If they come up as we go along, of course, ask them. All right, Superintendent, handing it over to you. Do you want to facilitate the debrief, or would you prefer I do that?
You can do that. I am, curious to, hear from everyone in terms of their, we spent a little bit of time before the meeting with Gavin and Kathy talking about some of the specific follow-up items that we came away with. I can walk through those if you would like, and then if there's anything else that you think we need to provide as a follow-up. But, just in general, some impressions and so on would be great as well.
Great. Would you like to just start off with that list so we can hear it? And if then as folks offer their impressions, they could add if they thought anything was missed. So
some of the data, the suspensions, I think that, Councilor Chung misunderstood, or, in fairness, the data wasn't, it wasn't like intended to be looked at that level. So we'll provide some tables that actually show the suspensions. We'll also provide the NWA data that we provided by race, which was something that he asked for. We have a slide from the community presentation that does a side-by-side of the FY22 and the FY23 EPS funding, like the entire thing. And so that was, I think, to Anna's, some of Councilor Terraro's questions. I think we can provide something that, sort of very clearly shows the FY22, FY23 differences. I think for Councilor Fournier asked for the value of the what's not included, which is what we prepared for you guys for the previous meeting. So we have that to provide, and the SRF balances, which is what we also provided at the last meeting. So I think those are the general things, and then I've that's it in terms of the sort of additional information that I sort of walked away with.
Great. Thanks, Superintendent. Looking at you, Yusuf, first. Emily, I see you have your hand raised. I'm sorry. Would you like to?
I just had a couple of things on that, which is on the state funding. I wonder if I don't remember the slide from the community presentation, but I wonder if it might be valuable to show state funding over time on a longer time horizon to give the council and frankly the board as well just a reminder of how the loss of state funding is a trend over many years now.
Are you guys seeing this? Are you seeing my screen right now? So do you see this is the EPS one that I was mentioning.
This is great.
Yeah. And then I think I'm pretty sure we have something in there on this, but if not, it's easy enough to. This gives you a bit of an idea there.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for. Something like this. And then one other on the kind of total value of what's not included in the budget of the what we the unmet needs. I wonder. I know all the dollar values are provided to us, but I do think it would be helpful to actually go through just the exercise of adding them all up, which I don't believe you did for us.
Great. Chair Figdor, while you have the mic, would you like to share any other impressions from the conversation with the joint finance committees?
I thought the meeting was a really good meeting in terms of how focused it was on the work that we have to do jointly with the city. So with Finance Chair Dion focusing it on kind of, as he said, as the kind of 40,000 foot level, as the city's role is to determine the overall, based on the charters, to determine our overall budget figure. That's a real kind of sea change from how these meetings have been run in the past. So I was just really appreciative of that focusing in on the city's role and that clarity. And then, of course, it's incredibly valuable to have our Mr. Varro, who just rolled off the board as the finance committee chair for the last several years, and Councilor Rodriguez, on the council, and just so deeply engaged and knowledgeable about our work and committed to it. So I mostly thought that, and then lastly, I should say, I thought the superintendent's presentation was excellent. It was. I think it did a really good job framing up why this is the budget that we've proposed or that the superintendent's proposed, and outlining it in a way that was understandable for the council. So I thought it was a really strong presentation.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Member Yusuf, any takeaways, impressions from the meeting, and/or anything else that you think should be on the list of things that are turned back to the Finance Committee from tonight?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo what Chair Figdor mentioned, and Superintendent, you present an amazing way that was clear to everybody and understandable. I also want to mention that this meeting was a little bit different than last year at the beginning, but I'm glad that you and Chair Adam and Councilor Mark Diane have the coordination to make sure that we focus on the budget and the numbers, and nobody asked mill rate. So that was my intention there. So great job. I'm looking forward. Our next meeting would be more easy and smooth, and thank you both.
Great, thank you. For myself, I was very appreciative of the tenor on the whole of that meeting, and Chair Dion, as well as the mayor's pointed framing and reminder of what this process is intended to be and how the two play together. I thought that was productive. I thought the superintendent's presentation was excellent and helped walk through things at the right level at the right time in terms of level of detail. So thank you, Superintendent and Kathy and everybody who contributed to that. The only other thing that I'd have for your list in this is wondering is now that there's been, unfortunately, doubt entered into relating to enrollment versus attendance versus if some memo should be sought that clarifies that and just puts that to rest. That's not my doubting. You're muted, Superintendent. And just to clarify, that's not my doubting your response to that. Just
yeah. And, just for the record, I want to be 100% clear that, attendance is not factored into funding. And, I worked, for many years in a state where it is. And, it has a huge number of implications that it doesn't here. And, I think the thing that gets lost in that is that we're very focused on attendance, not because of the funding, but because it's important to have kids in schools. And that whole sort of line of questioning is incredibly unfortunate. And so anyway, but yes, we should absolutely provide very clear understanding that attendance is not factored into it.
Thank you, Superintendent. Chair Figdor.
I just maybe want to convey communication I got from Councillor Dion, and others might have as well, but I'll just mention that he extended his apologies to us for the questions that were the confrontation, and said that he greatly appreciates all the work that everyone's done to get here tonight, and that he apologizes for the attack. So just want to convey those sentiments from him.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was very grateful for his handling and timely retrieval of the gavel to bring things to order. I thought that was appreciated. Okay. I think we're good on the debrief there. And so now definitely to you, Superintendent and staff, to take us through these unanswered prior question sections of the agenda.
So I just updated the deck that was in the board doc. So if you had it open from before, you may want to just close that and go and refresh. It has one additional slide in there. So that's all that's really changed, and little bits and pieces. But for the most part, it's the same thing that was posted last night. We're going to start right at page 8 on that, which is the agenda for tonight, which Chair, you just went through. And let's see, I should share my screen. Kathy, I think I'll share my screen because you're going to then go and do, I'll need to transfer it over to you when you're going to do the spreadsheet, right? So, yeah, so I'll do this.
Do I need to get out or, oh, I guess.
I think you guys can see me now.
Yep.
Screen. Yep. Okay. So, so this is our agenda for tonight, which Chairman Burke just went through. And then we're going to jump right in. One of the things that we were asked for was the ELL and the special ed staffing allocation formulas. We had done all of the others and had referenced these, but we had not shown them. So here we have a summary of the ELL, and here we have the special ed, but we also in the packet have the actual, because these are just sort of like snapshots of what it looks like. So the actual staffing allocations by school and program where pertinent are in the actual packet. So I don't know, is Jesse with us, Malia? He is, yeah. I know that Carlos isn't here. I don't know if you want to talk about this at all, or if there are any questions. We didn't have like a ton of detail that, I think it was Chair Figdor had asked for us to provide this information, so we did. But I don't know if you have specific questions about it. And Jess is here to help answer any questions about the weightings and things along those lines that you may have.
Superintendent, I'm happy to give just a teeny bit of voiceover to the ELL piece if that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So in terms of the ELL staffing, and I have Carlos on the bat phone here in case I do need to ask him specific questions. So there could be a slight delay, but we can get back on anything hopefully tonight. But oops, I think if you can go back a slide, that'd be helpful. Thank you. So basically the way we build toward the overall ratio assumptions, it's a science and an art. When I was working with Carlos initially several years ago to create a predictable and consistent methodology, I was hoping for like a very clear linear algorithm, and got schooled by many ELL teachers about the degree of nuance that's factored into this process. So I just would say that as, a framing point that I think is important to know. The way we built toward the overall ratio assumptions in terms of students to teachers is connected to what's outlined in our allow plan as far as what's assumed for time needed for collaboration and for direct English language instruction, which is different for a student who's CAL, so levels 3 and up, versus a student who's IELD who needs more intensive instruction. So there are these kind of blocks of instruction along with times for collaboration that got baked into those general teacher to student ratio assumptions. So that's kind of one thing to understand. Then the way we look at the data is, and part of this is there's a snapshot here, but you can see this in the full formula that's attached, is to look at the total number of English language learners in the school. And then we disaggregate that by levels of English language proficiency, which then correlate to those assumptions about the amount of time for direct language instruction. And then we also, so that kind of gives us the teacher to student ratio, as we look through all of that. Then we also consider the sort of other factors that create potentially more complexity and therefore require more capacity. And so you can see on the slide here, we look at students who are newcomers, the younger students who are experiencing homelessness, students who are duly identified in special ed and English language learners, et cetera. And that factors in, I think, mostly in two ways. One, if we're kind of right on the line with a ratio, if there's high complexity, that might tip us to the next kind of FTE versus lower complexity, it wouldn't. And then it also drives where we place ed techs. So a school like East End that might have a lot of IELD students experiencing homelessness, et cetera, that might be a place we choose to place some of the language acquisition ed techs to support. So I think that's all I wanted to say, but just wanted to give you a little bit of that context in terms of how we built toward what you see in the data.
Thank you. I guess, is there any questions from the committee before we move on that? Okay. Onward.
Do you want, whoa.
I'm sorry. I'm very bad at this. That's why I always have somebody else drive.
I'm glad you're good at other things, Superintendent. You can be bad at this one.
Jesse, do you want me to frame this, or do you want to just dive right in to give a little bit of explanation?
If you want frame it, that would be great.
Sure. And then, yeah, definitely. So we built the special education staffing formula, I think about a year after the ELL one, and we were striving for a similar kind of predictable and consistent way to look at our staffing ratios at the teacher and ed tech level. And for context, this came from an experience of having many times requests for additional ed techs partway through the year because of IEP needs. And we were not feeling like we had a strong line of sight into, do we just keep adding, or are there places we might be able to reallocate? And so thus emerged this more systematic way to look at our staffing. So this gets updated several times throughout the year because IEP goals change and students come and go. So basically, and this is a little snapshot here again, you have reference to the full spreadsheet in the docs. But if you take East End as an example school, we look at the total number of students who have IEPs in the school. For just to be clear, this is students that are in more of a resource setting. So it does not include students that are in a specialized district program. So for example, at Talbot, we have the Bridge program. Those students would not be included in this count because students in that program have a whole separate staffing model for that program. So then we consider a variety of factors. Way over on the spreadsheet, you can't see it here. We have a weighted formula. This is something many states and districts do. When we built this, that we researched this across the country, pulled from several models, leaned heavily on a model from Madison, Wisconsin. And it just gives a weight to each disability category because we know that not all disability types require the same amount of service and don't have the same amount of intensity, in terms of time to provide service. And so basically we apply those weights and then we get our weighted numbers. So at East End here, you can see they would have 35 students in the building, but after we apply the disability category weights, really it's more like having 42 and a half students. And then we also apply a weight for duly identified students. And so from that weighted average, we then look at the ratio of student to teacher. And you can see we use these baseline assumptions or targets for figuring out that teacher to student ratio, and then the overall adult to student ratio when you factor in ed techs. And so that is the sort of gist behind this model. And then this enables us to identify where we need to add, where we might be able to reduce. And then a huge value of this is being able to reallocate in the case that there's changing needs across buildings, which is why we manage this staffing centrally. So I think those are the main things I wanted to say there. Jesse, feel free to jump in if you think I missed something important.
No, I think that's great, Emily. I'm happy to answer any other questions that folks have, though.
Any questions from the committee or other members with us? Yep. Member Youssef.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Malia, I missed the reducing staff. What is the process you said?
For like if we were reducing?
Yeah.
So usually what happens is that it's really results in reallocation for a place where we find another need. And this is true. We do this both for the ELL and special ed, but there could be times it's like with our elementary or middle school staffing formulas, how we applied the formulas and saw that in some cases we are higher than we needed to be, in which case we would have a reduction. In our budget this year, that's not happening. Instead, we are finding opportunities to reallocate from one school to another because a school doesn't have enough staffing, but another school might have a little too much staffing as articulated in the model. And one other thing I should say with this is if a student has a one-on-one who's with them in their IEP, that is not counted in the formula because that would, skew our assumptions and make it look like we have more staff than we really do. So that's another caveat I forgot to share. But basically for reduction, it's in this year's budget, it's really about some internal reallocation we're doing so that we're not asking for more ed tech or resource staff across the sort of in general, because we're able to pull, and we haven't done this yet, we haven't enacted this, but we would be able to pull some staff from one building to the next. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Don't see any other hands up. Oh, kidding. Chair Figdor.
I just want to say I looked at these charts earlier today, and I'm looking at them now, and I think it's a lot to take in, and I don't have questions, but I just want to appreciate your providing the board this level of information, because I think it's very helpful to see, even though I'm still figuring it out. So I'm gonna keep looking at the charts. But I certainly understand the overall, the big picture. So thank you for providing them and walking us through them.
Great.
Okay. Next, you had asked, I'm sorry, did somebody have a hand up?
Just the same note as you. Okay, moving on.
Okay. So next, you had asked us to get a staffing and cost analysis for our district programs. And so that's what you have here. You can look at the bottom sort of subtable there that has that aggregated by program, or you can look at the specifics where it's, by site as well as by program. So, I don't know, Jesse, if you want to walk through that. Jesse, Kathy, both of you put in a tremendous amount of work to do that this week, and I really appreciate it. So I don't know, I want to make sure that I do it justice. Turning it over to you.
Sure. I mean, I can certainly go through in more detail if that'd be helpful, but I would just point out, you can see that there is a wide variety of costs, per student in total cost, depending on the program. Of course, some of that is how many students are at each location. It's not not the exact same number, but when you look at the per student costs, what's really driving that is, and you'll see this in the second or the third column where we have the ed techs is, for example, in our elementary, at the top two ones, the Beach and the FLS program, there's essentially, an ed tech, an ed tech for every student, right? So the same number of ed techs as students, basically. And then that's not true in most of the other programs. And then in the Breathe programs, that's more of a ratio. So you typically have like a teacher and 2 ed techs for every 8 students or so. So I would say that's the biggest thing driving the cost. We also have the specialists in the fourth column would be, speech providers, occupational therapy, physical therapy. This also includes the social workers who are part of the Breathe, a key part of the Breathe model. So, we sort of did our best to estimate to sort of calculate how much time we're giving of our specialists in those programs too. And so that's what's doing it. But I would say that the big driver is certainly the number of ed techs that, we have in these programs, and the ones that have ed techs for most or all kids clearly are, of course, going to be the most expensive ones.
Just a quick question that I should have asked before and I didn't. The BCBAs, because we talked about the fact that BCBAs are our current 2 are largely committed to the district program. So are they split out over the specialist thing?
Yeah, exactly. So we sort of, again, calculated the percentage of each BCBA's time they spend with their different programs, and we worked that into this. That's why some of these specialist numbers are sort of the point for whatever. We're adding up different percentages of time.
And then what is the admin?
Admin would be the time, time spent by, in some cases a little bit me, but mostly my assistant directors, or the director of Breathe and the assistant principal, and then the leadership team is the additional folks who are on the Breathe leadership team: teacher, coach, clinical lead, and again, sort of their time, how it's roughly split up among. These are estimates for sure, but also just trying to capture all the costs and the people costs that go into serving these programs and the oversight of these programs.
I don't know if that's what you were asking for, Emily, or if there's something else.
Yes, this is incredibly helpful. I don't know that I've ever seen a slide like this that looks at the district programs and with this lens. So for me, it's very helpful because it helps me get perspective. And so I realized that I am sure quite a lot of work to go into this. And I want to thank you because sometimes I think as board members, it's hard for us to ensure that we understand the scale of programs, and we understand the basic staffing and the basic theory behind them. So this helps me a lot in a kind of bird's eye view. So thank you for that. I do have just one question that has jumped out at me, which is just understanding the difference between, for instance, high school Breathe support at Portland and high school and Deering, where it looks like Deering has more kids and half the staff. So is that based on the specific? Are those based on weighted differences in weighting? No.
Emily, I don't know if you want to speak to this at all. I think we I think there has sometimes been some moving around of folks within Breathe, depending on not just the number of kids but the needs of the students. So that could be part of it. But it's true that what you're seeing is that it's not an exact ratio all the time, the same ratio all the time for those programs. And I think I really would need, the Breathe team to speak more directly to the specifics of it, but that is how it's currently set up. Yeah.
We could definitely follow up with more specifics, like Jesse mentioned. I know that at Portland High, I believe there's been a little bit of sharing over some of the specialist support with the beach program that's there. So there's a little bit of some carryover. So originally, Breathe day treatment was at Portland High, but it had student profiles that fit our beach model and our Breathe model. So we got more precise around that. I don't know if you recall, but when we originally launched the Breathe Continuum, we hadn't totally completed the high school piece of that. We had those students together. So then when we were able to decouple those programs, and because they are specialized and targeted toward pretty different profiles, I think some of the social work support that was in place with Beach was carried over with some students. So I think there's some of that that's going on. And then also, like Jesse mentioned, kind of where we are at this point in time or moment in time, as far as how we're flexibly moving some of our resources around, like you said, based on the specific student needs.
Does the fact that Deering has the day treatment also, that there's some staffing that can be leveraged there that is supporting those kids?
Yeah, if you look above at the high school Breathe day treatment Deering, you get I'm just looking, total FTE for that is 4.6. And for the in-school supported during is 3.9. So combined, they have this staff. So that's true, Javier. There is some, we can flex our capacity there more easily because that day treatment program is also housed within the building. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
And I have one other question. Thank you. I had the sense that our BHP numbers were a lot higher than this. I'm surprised that they're not. Am I mistaken?
These are agency.
Yeah, you're not. If you're talking about agency BHPs, the large majority of them are actually with students who are not in these programs. They're with students who are in the resource setting.
Of course.
And that what we were speaking about before.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much.
And I would just quickly point out there, member Figdor, that then if you look at the ed tech line here, 85 ed techs for this, it's because, we hire our own staff essentially. So you see a really high ed tech number in the programs total.
And that is, I'll point out, just sort of a little bit of a historical piece on this, that, this has been a concerted effort that, a number of years ago, you would have seen many more agency BHPs and more reliance on agency BHPs than hiring our own ed techs, and that's been a big part, particularly around Breathe. That was one of the very significant changes that were made where we converted, and the BHPs, the agency BHPs, there's a, it's a lesser cost for us than there is with our own ed techs, but that was a concerted effort to move in that direction.
I remember that. Thank you so much.
I have no questions. Remember, Yusuf, your hands up.
Thank you, Chair. I have a quick question. The functional life skills and the speech students are the same needs, pretty much.
No. The functional life skills is for students with, really significant cognitive and intellectual disabilities. So some of them, some certainly do have autism, but the BEACH program is designed more specifically for students with autism. So there's, maybe some small amount of overlap, but they are definitely two distinct populations of students. And the students in the FLS programs need, even more sort of support with functional type needs.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Chair Figdor?
Sorry, I had another question. Can we go back for 1 second? I'm just wondering, in terms of if you look at the bottom of the chart and the summarizing the programs and looking at the total cost per FTE. I'm sorry. So the total cost per student. Is there? Can you remind me? One, in terms of, I have some sense that the state reimburses us, or is supposed to reimburse us beyond a certain amount, and then how does the cost per student that we're experiencing? Is there any way that to contextualize that in terms of in terms of what the experience is, in other places in Maine, or bigger picture? Is there anything you can do to help contextualize those numbers for me?
Yeah, I can start. I think and I don't think Jesse and Kathy, this included the transportation cost. So that's, I think, on top of this. Right. But the state, if a district were to send a student out of district, the state does reimburse. And Jesse, isn't it around 39,000?
Yeah, they would. The idea is to reimburse down to 39,000. So the expenditure of the district is 39,000.
Right. So here you do see our average is above, but we do not get reimbursed because we're not sending these students out of district, and so our cost is slightly more on average than what we would pay if we were sending them out of district. And in some programs, like our elementary beach program, as an example, we pay significantly more per student than what we would get if we were sending students to out of district programs. So we've been getting interested in this question because we've been taking a deep dive into our district-wide programs and trying to really look critically at the model and how we're structuring them, which includes the staffing. And coming out of the work groups that are ongoing throughout this year and into the spring, there are recommendations that require even more resource, which has led us to question the feasibility of running these kinds of highly specialized programs in district. And so we are starting to take a bigger picture look at that, and that's going to be a big body of work in this coming year. And we have also initiated conversations with the state to inquire about whether or not there would be a world where we could get reimbursed for highly specialized programs the way we would if we were sending the students out of district, in order to have the revenue needed to, fully resource the programs according to what our teams believe is necessary and in line with best practice. So I think your question is a question we've been asking ourselves, and we're kind of in the middle of a process to really look carefully at that and unpack what we're seeing and and that will result in a set of recommendations that I'm sure we'll be engaging you on over the next year.
Can I just add a back of the envelope, calculation around this is that, just by looking at this, and as Malia mentioned, this doesn't include all of our real costs, because it doesn't include transportation and, other, issues that come along with this. We could potentially save $1.2 million if all of these students were sent out of district. Now, that doesn't actually make sense, because there's many students who are much better off in the settings that we have them in than if they were in an out of district special placement. There also, aren't necessarily enough out of district special placements for all of our students. So they'd be on waiting lists and things along those lines. But just to sort of contextualize it, that, if we got reimbursed for anything that we spend over $39,000 for each of these kids, it could be up to, roughly $1.2 million. So certainly something for us to be cognizant of. These programs were created because we do think that, unlike many districts that have just a handful of students who are FLS and not enough to really create a program, or enough students who are on the autism spectrum, that's why we've created these programs. And we think that, there's a tremendous merit for many of our students, but they're also obviously very challenging for us to be able to do well. And as Malia mentioned, the work of the planning groups is really sort of, all telling us that we need to spend more money on these programs. And so it's certainly something for us to continue to figure out over the course of the next year.
Thank you all for the discussion and points. I'd just like to raise and ask the superintendent to help me, you and I, to work together on how we're going to approach the state to address the lack of fit between Medicaid billing and these programs. And as we've talked about that previously in this committee, I think that's something we really need to attend to outside of this budget process. I don't see any other questions or comments here. So I think we're okay to move on when you're ready.
Okay, sorry about that. So what we wanted to do next, and this is where I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this, Kathy, that these are the proposed amendments that we tracked at our last meeting. And so what we are prepared to do, it might make sense for us to walk through these real quick just to make sure that we've got everything, appropriately cataloged. And then we have a spreadsheet that Kathy has developed that looks at, our current budget and all of these investments and what it looks like, if all of them are invested, and gives us the ability to mix and match and pull things out, leave things in, to, sort of facilitate your understanding of it. And we also have an accompanying piece that looks at, if we funded that out of fund balance, what would the impact be on the fund balance? So let's just walk through this real quick, make sure that everything that we talked about is here.
Mr. Superintendent, maybe it's better if the board members who proposed or brought up issues that they might make motions on at our meeting on Monday. I can't remember when our meeting was, whenever our last meeting was. If they can indicate whether they intend to go forward with that motion, right? Because I can say for myself, I don't intend to go forward with all three of these motions, for instance.
So we can do that when we get to the spreadsheet. But I just want to make sure that I'm not missing something. I think, we tried to be inclusive of everything, but I just want to make sure that if you had asked for something and you don't see it here, that we know about it, so that as we flip over to the spreadsheet, what you can expect to see there.
This looks to include what I recall and had listed from the meeting. Certainly for myself, as well as what I recall for others.
Okay, then I'm gonna stop sharing and let you. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Superintendent. Chair, can I say something?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah. I think I also mentioned make it happen program more staffing. So just want to throw that out.
Yep. Sorry about that. I was aware of that and I somehow missed putting that in there. But it is in the spreadsheet, if I recall correctly. So as a question, actually, but yes, we did track it.
Thank you for flagging that, Member Youssef.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing, and Kathy, you can take it over.
It would help if I unmuted. I'm so sorry. Are you able to see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the requests with amounts associated with them, except for the Make It Happen staff. I wasn't quite sure. We weren't quite sure how many.
Would you like to hear a response from Member Youssef this time if there's a specific number of staff?
Or how many staff? Yes.
Yeah.
That might be helpful.
I don't still have any number, so I think I wasn't to make any motion tonight, so you can go ahead.
Okay. So what we added to the spreadsheet here is just board chair Figdors, member Bondos, and member Burks, Chair Burke, actually finance chair. Those amounts here to show you what the increase in property taxes would look like up here. And we can add anything else that is being considered. So we did it two ways. Here's the tax increase if it's going to affect property taxes. And here's what it would look like if it was the use of fund balance. And it's only these three items right now that are included in here. So you can see, like, on the use of fund balance, it's not going to be any impact. This is what we've got currently with the superintendent's budget. is currently no change if we use fund balance, but of course the budget's gone up from 5.1 to 5.3, which it will in this version as well, except the difference is going to impact taxes. So it would go from 4.1 to 4.4. And we could do that by increasing and decreasing. I know it's kind of busy, but that was the intent of this, is to try to.
Yeah, so the bottom line at this is, in either case, the budget increases from 5.1 to 5.3.
Yes.
If it was to go to the local budget and without use of fund balance, it's a 0.3% increase or a 2-cent increase on the tax rate if all those items were included. That's where we're at right now. Okay.
That's where we're at.
And Kathy, the pre-K is not shown there because we would have additional revenue for that?
No, I didn't know if, I guess that was part of our exercise here, is to determine if we were going to go forward with that or not. And I can certainly add that here.
Yeah, but
and it would have offsetting.
Yeah,
revenue.
that one would have some offset of revenue. But there's a good, as Malia outlined when this came up, there's a good programmatic reason why we don't want to do that one. But, just to be clear, it's, you can potentially just add that in there as well.
Okay, so it seems like, thank you for this. This is a very useful tool and certainly meets what I understood we were asking you for. So I think now on the agenda is just an opportunity for the board to have a little bit of or the committee, a little bit of loose conversation about what we're looking at here, and then we'd move into making motions. Does that jive with what you're seeing? We're in the agenda, everybody? Okay, great. So to the committee or any members that are present, any comments or discussion that you'd like to have about what we're looking at here, or what your current thoughts are related to items that you had brought forward on at the last meeting, and what you may intend to do this evening? We can just try to start boiling this down. Okay. Yes, Chair Figdor.
Yeah, so I would like to go forward, or I intend to go forward with a motion to add the 1.3 social workers. So the social worker position at Rowe and the part-time position at Peaks. And again, that just brings consistency to the staffing ratios. And then I also intend to go forward with the ELL allocation, again, leveling up so that we're more consistent with our staffing formulas. So adding a 0.5 ELL teacher at Lyseth and a 0.5 at Deering High School. I don't plan to go forward with the motion with respect to the SLIFE position because in discussing it further, I know that, we are seeing, we're working with an increasing number of new arrivals who have limited or interrupted formal education. But it does seem like a kind of perfect position to use federal funding for. We'll probably have that funding we could use that funding for 2 or 3 years to see if we continue to see increases in that population. And if so, then we could, at that point, move additional SLIFE positions into our local budget. So just in thinking about it more, it seemed like it's actually a good opportunity to use the federal funding to address that need. So my motion, and I can do them, either separately or together, and maybe I'll look to you for how you'd like me to proceed, but would add a total of 2.3 positions.
Great. Question for you. Would you, based on what you're looking at here, would you intend to put that onto the tax rate or our use of fund balance?
Sorry. And I would like to use our fund balance to cover those costs. So keeping the tax rate increase at 4.1%. And I honestly could be convinced either way, but I do think that it looks like we will have, we'll add a robust amount to our fund balance this year in FY22. So I feel I feel comfortable using additional funding that we've already allocated to cover these positions next year.
Great. And per your question, in terms of process here, I'm without the actual use of a straw poll, I'm trying to get a sense for where we're all at. And if we can do it as one batch amendment, that would be preferred than doing it item by item. So let's just see what Member Youssef and I have to say as well. And then we can move into the amendment portion of the evening. Sound okay?
That sounds great.
Great. Thanks. Member Youssef, looking to you if you have anything you'd like to comment on or discuss.
I just want to get clarification of using the fund balance and the difference between.
So in a nutshell, if we use fund balance, it does not impact the tax rate this year, but it reduces the amount of money that we have in fund balance that we can use in a subsequent year to offset future tax increases. And the cost will be in the budget next year when we roll the budget over without fund balance being used for it. So it'll be, an addition of what Chair Figdor just added, 2.3 FTE.
And if we use from the fund balance, if we don't use from the fund balance, is that roll over money to our next budget?
Yeah, except that it's already been built into the tax rate.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add, there's the discretion that we need to exercise in terms of the superintendent's laid out in terms of the implications of using from fund balance, both in terms of what would be available to us in future years, as well as the fact that it will increase the local budget in fiscal year 24, just because of the addition of positions. And then I'll bring forth Executive Director looking back comments of that. Always the directive of the Director of Finance is to increase your fund balances up to the maximum amount so that you have that available. So those are, we have funds available. We could have more funds available in our fund balance if we don't use it. That's, one piece of advice that we received, but it's at our discretion as we go forward tonight, if that's helpful to hear again. Any other questions or things you'd like to discuss, Member Youssef?
Can I just ask about the early childhood, the pre-K program? Again, we programmatically would prefer not to move forward with it. And so I just want to be clear, are you advancing that or not?
Mr. Youssef, may I speak to that as well? I have a follow-up question for the superintendent.
Couldn't Member Youssef respond first, if that's okay, please?
Yes, Ms. Figdor, go ahead, please.
Okay.
So, my understanding is, is as Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Nali said at our last meeting that we don't have a site. We don't have space or a site for a second classroom this year. Next year, we'll have a classroom at Presumpscott and is that right? In the new building?
Right.
And a pre-K classroom at Reiki in the building.
Potentially, yes. Construction is lagging at Reiki. So.
Oh, come on.
As well as a new classroom at YFO, which serves the Reiki neighborhood.
Right, right. So next year there's real, it's not even just potential. Next year we have space that we don't this year. So Mr. Youssef, just in, I don't like slowing down our pre-K investments, but at the same time, it's just the reality is if we move forward with this additional classroom, we probably can't actually, like if we go forward with these additional positions, we probably can't actually add the additional staff, the additional classroom. So it's a practicality. And then we have a solution already in that next year we're going to have this additional space, and then YFO is building out their facility. So it's a tougher situation this year, but more potential next year. So that's why I am comfortable with just adding the one rather than the 2 pre-K classrooms this year.
Assistant Superintendent, would you like to comment as well?
I did want to just add another just quick piece of context, though it sounds like I'm not sure, Member Youssef, what your intentions are, but I did, in addition to the points that Member Figdor just shared that I had expressed in the last meeting about just the potential for expansion this year as compared to next year. I met with our pre-K director this week, and she also reminded me that there are other things that we're focused on in this coming year. So there's looking to be a path toward the CDS transitioning into the district soon. And so we're going to be taking active steps in that direction, which is a big and significant undertaking, and which could have implications for how we think about the way we build those next expansion classrooms in order to provide services. So there's just a strategic issue at play with the CDS expansion that factors into why it's our recommendation that we don't try to do 2 this year, but wait and get the 2 new classrooms next year. And then there's other things pertaining to wanting to put focus on building out a potential strategy for before and after care, as well as focusing on program quality, because we have been expanding pretty rapidly. And then through COVID, and we believe we need to really put time, attention, and energy toward the quality of the program. So I just wanted to add those points as well, because I think I really just focused on the ability to expand last time, but not these other strategic initiatives that are at play, and why it would be our recommendation not to try to do 2 this coming year.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent. Member Youssef, would you like to speak to your thoughts and intentions at this point on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Ms. Chair Figdor, and also Assistant Malia. Since our last meeting, I thought about a lot, and my intention was to continue the plan that we made to have 2 classes. And I was really, the trend that we did and the improvement that we did in pre-K is really remarkable. And I was so excited to move on and support our expansion of pre-K. Tonight, I'm not planning to go forth, and I really want to express my trust and confidence of your experts and the plan that the district have. And it seems to me that it's a good plan to switch the process and add 2 classes next year instead of 2 this year. And we'll still be on top of our goal to have that 5 years. So that's where I am, and thank you for explaining more, and thank you.
Great. Thank you, Member Youssef. And could I just ask you in relation to the social worker to pre-K too?
Yes, that's also the same thing. I'm not planning to add it. It's the formula. It makes sense to me, and it's more than it covers more than we needed. So it's also a good plan to have that next year.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing with us. For myself, I remain in support of the 1.3 social workers at Row and the Island schools. I didn't intend for tonight for the mobile makerspace teacher to move forward. I heard clearly last time that we're going to find that funding elsewhere. I also brought forward in support of Member Bondo's request for the 1.0 FTE for the identified ELs. I don't plan to make a motion on that this evening. I think the full board can grapple with that further if they'd like to, but based on my understanding of our conversations at this point, it's like Member Youssef, my excitement and my desire to be helpful and put resources in place might be a little bit ahead of where we are. And that doesn't actually help us in the end. So not going to try to move that forward. On the ELL teachers, I'm split. Lysith is an easy support for me because of looking at the discrepancy between that and Row and the recommendations and the footnotes on that position. And then DHS, I heard clearly that it's something that can be worked through the equity enhancement. And I also understand the rationale for utilizing the the ratios and formulas that we have. And I'm a little, I guess, ambivalent because I believe it will get done either way. And I don't really know if one's more right than the other on how it gets done. So that's where I'm at on those items right now. So I think where we're at is we can easily move forward in an amendment on the social workers, if I'm not mistaken, and we could try it with the ELL teachers included and find out what I do. At least I don't know what Member Yusuf's intentions are, but we'll can add a little excitement. What's Burke gonna do? So I'm okay either way. I look to you, Chair Figdor, to make a motion however you'd like to prefer at this point.
I guess I want one just to have a little bit more discussion about the ELL position at the half FTE at Deering. My concern there is I don't want the equity enhancement to have to be used for kind of our base staffing. I want it to actually be an enhancement. And so that's where I'm having trouble. That's where I get stuck and want to include this position. I understand that either way it will get done, but an enhancement, it means just that. It's on top of the basic, it's on top of the core staffing. So I don't know if the superintendent or, if anyone else wants to address that. But what, in these 2.3 positions, what I'm, looking for is following through on our staffing ratios and having I know there's always judgment calls, but making it internally consistent as possible.
Yeah, I would just be curious to hear from the superintendent if the way you frame that, if that trues up to how he and others see it or not.
I mean, I've had this conversation, one-on-one with, I know with Emily and I believe with you as well, Adam. I think that, I understand the logic that, the logic of these are the formulas and as you heard Malia talk, the formula is not a linear algorithm. It is it's part art and part, science. So I am comfortable not moving forward with the formula in this case. And, to the extent that position is actually needed, then that is something that we can prioritize doing in the, with the equity enhancements. And, I am completely comfortable with that. And I also understand that, the formula right now calls for it. I think there can potentially be a day where we can't, we can't meet the formula requirements either. So I'm certainly not, I'm not, I appreciate the spirit in which it comes. I think that if we have the position, it will be put to good use. And, I also think that if we don't have a position this way, if it's a priority at Deering, we will make it happen using the enhancement.
And then thank you for that. And then Chair Burke and Member Youssef, I'm interested in what your thoughts on are. If my intention is to use our fund balance to pay for these positions, and just to have, so you have the figure. And Kathy's updated the spreadsheet. I use my calculator, but yeah, it's $153,000. So it Kathy, could you go up so I could see? I didn't see the tax rate increase. So it moves the tax rate increase to 4.3% if we include it in the base budget. So again, my inclination would be to use our fund balance to pay for it, but I'm interested to hear where you're coming down on that issue, because you can convince me otherwise if that's your prerogative.
Member Youssef, your thoughts?
I think the fund balance is the way to go. We don't want a more increase on the budget, so on the tax rate. So I think it's a good idea to use the fund balance.
I'm in the same place.
Okay. So if the time is right, Chair Burke, I'm going to move forward with a motion to add a social worker, 1 FTE social worker at Row, 0.3 social worker FTE social worker at the island schools serving the islands, and then a 0.5 ELL teacher at Lyseth, and a 0.5 ELL teacher at Deering High School. And I'm gonna, my proposal is to pay for those positions using our fund balance.
I'll second. Anything else you'd like to speak to on that motion, Chair Figdor?
No, I think.
That's fine. That's fine. We'll give you the opportunity. Yep. Any board discussion on the motion to amend in the amount of $153,295 to the superintendent's budget to include those positions? I don't have anything further to say. Member Youssef? Okay. I'm going to look to, we have an attendee, it appears. So if our public attendee would like to make a comment, please lower your hand, which you would find in the lower toolbar of your Zoom screen. And once you raise your hand, I would call on you, give you the permission to speak, and you'd have up to 3 minutes to share your point of view after sharing your name and where you live. Okay. We'll go ahead and close public comment. And I did that backwards. There should have been any questions from the board, public comment, and now any board discussion. So just to clarify our parliamentary procedures here. So once again, any board discussion? Go ahead and I'll call a vote. Superintendent, does that go through you, or are you going to call us and ask us to vote, or do I do that?
I've been planning, but I can. It's a small enough group. I can see everybody at the same time, so I can do this. And I will start with Board Member Youssef.
Yes.
Board Member Figdor. Board Chair Figdor.
Yes.
And Finance Chair Burke.
Yes.
Kathy, I want this spreadsheet. I'm sorry, but this is the greatest spreadsheet ever.
So the motion...
I don't usually get that comment. No.
The motion is approved. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, so I can't recall the $153,000 and Was it 295?
153, 295. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Added to the superintendent's budget to cover the 1.3 social workers and the 2.5 EL teachers. So
can I just also just apologize because I did not, I thought I saw everyone, but I did not see that student board member deal with here. So I would like to
yes,
apologize. And I don't know, Jody, would you vote on that motion?
Yes.
That's why I stopped sharing so you could see everybody. I didn't know if you could because I hadn't.
Sorry.
nope. Thank you for the catch, and I couldn't see either, so I apologize as well. Okay, so with that, the or business ahead of us is to make a motion to what's it say here? Action to approve the budget and recommend the budget to the full board. So, and that budget, so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Youssef. Any board questions? Any?
I have a question. So the item that we haven't a motion in this meeting in the finance committee we can do on full board, right? Yes.
If there's something that you would still possibly like to amend to this budget, you could make that motion in the full board. Yes, absolutely.
And board members that are not here could advance new things that we've not, even talked about. So we will have that spreadsheet available in case that were to happen, and then we just add things at that time and make the adjustments.
Thank you for clarifying.
Of course. Any other board questions? Any public comment? Close public comment. Any board discussion? Yes, Chair Figdor.
I just want to thank the superintendent and Kathy and the full team for the tremendous amount of work that has gone into this budget. I feel very confident with where it's ended up, and know that this year in particular, going from a rollover budget of 11 to 12% increase down to 4.1% was a tremendous effort, and I appreciate, I think the focus is right on executing our priorities coming, after 2 years of the pandemic. And I just want to, just appreciate the work, the clarity of presentation. You all make our jobs as board members easy because you present the information, and I think over the last the last 5 or so years too have gotten to a point where we're incredibly thoughtful about many of the about all of the work that underlies the budget figures. So you're making it very easy for us, and thank you for that, and for all of your work, and for all that you do to serve the students of Portland. I think this is a good budget.
Great. Member Youssef.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo what Chair Victor mentioned and thank Superintendent, Executive Director Kathy, and Assistant Malia, and the whole team. And I am so proud to be to witness this remarkable budget. A lot of issues, concerns, and investment that I had in mind is fulfilled in this budget. So that's the effort and expert and dedication that you as a team have to invest our students So I just want to thank you, and thanks for helping me and the new board members to guide us, understand, and get the details and answer questions. And we're looking forward to talk more in the full board and the city, and come up with a good investment in our school, our students, and the district. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I echo all that. I think that you, Ms. Dio, for being here still at 8:27. You've been here through the whole process. I really appreciate your commitment. To the superintendent staff, since we just can't have a medium white t-shirt, you all make the small gray ones that got a little miscut on them look pretty good on us. So thank you. I think we did some really diligent work here in this committee and teched in a couple important positions to move forward, and I appreciate that work. And I appreciate the superintendent repeating himself a few times to help us get there. I'm also very grateful that we do still have federal funding to work with, so that things that are also important can move forward and don't have to be squeezed into this budget. That's actually quite a relieving gift. So for myself, I know those garden positions are going to be important, and there's many others that I'll be looking to move forward there, and just want to have that said, so folks know that my commitment to such things hasn't wavered, but it's about a time and place and being pragmatic about how it gets done. So that any further discussion? If not, we can move to the vote. Superintendent, you got us all on view this time? You take us.
Yeah.
Okay.
With student board member Dew.
Yes.
Member Youssef.
Yes.
Board Chair Figdor.
Yes.
And Committee Chair Burke.
Yes. So the motion has been unanimously approved, with student representative voting with the board, and this budget will now move forward to the full board next week. I appreciate everybody's work and due diligence. Have a good evening, and I'll see you next week.